Hi students and welcome back to Top Scholars. In today's session, we are going to discuss about the PYQs, that is the previous year's questions asked on the topic life processes. We will be taking the questions from the year 2023 all the way to the 2025. So, let's begin with it. So children, let's look at the weightage of this topic in the last 2 years. That is, 1 marker questions were asked in year 23, 24 and 25 each. But look at the distribution. 3 questions were asked in 23, 2 questions were asked in 24 and again 2 questions were asked in 25. This means children that 1 marker questions are constantly asked and it is a hot favorite question. 2 marker questions were asked, total 2 in number in year 23. 1 in year 2024 and only 1 question in 2025. Now let's go ahead. 3 marker questions were asked only 1 in year 2023. Alright. Again, 1 more question was asked in 2024 but not asked in 25. Right. And 4 marker question children was only asked once, that is in the year 2025. So if we look at the total weightage of this topic in 2023, 10 marks of questions were asked from here, 7 marks in 2024 and 8 marks in the year 2025. So from this, one thing should be clear to you children is that this is an important topic. Alright, so let's discuss it. First, we will talk about 1 marker question that was asked in the year 2023. And the question is, an organism which breaks down the food material outside the body and then absorbs it inside is number 1, a plant parasite, that is Cuscuta. Number 2, an animal parasite, that is a tapeworm. Number 3, a bacteria, that is Rhizobium. And number 4, a fungus, that is Rhizopus. Alright, children, whenever you are faced with MCQ question, one method that you should use is the elimination method. So let's first discuss the first option, that is a plant parasite, that is Cuscuta. Children, this parasite, it lives inside the plant and therefore it simply absorbs the ready-made food from inside. It does not break down any food and therefore option A is a incorrect option. Option B talks about an animal parasite, that is the tapeworm. Children, again, tapeworm lives inside the intestines of humans and it does not break any food. Just like Cuscuta, it simply absorbs the ready-made food which is already broken by your digestive system. Therefore, tapeworm is also incorrect option. Option C is a bacteria, that is the Rhizobium. Children, Rhizobium is a nitrogen fixing bacteria. It is not a parasite. Alright, and therefore it also becomes the incorrect option. And hence now what we are left with? The last option, that is the fungus Rhizopus. Children, fungus, they show a mode of nutrition which is known as saprophytic mode of nutrition. In this mode of nutrition, the fungus, it releases the digestive enzymes outside and these digestive enzymes will digest or break the food material outside its body. Once the complex food material is broken down into simple substance, that is carbohydrates is broken down into glucose or protein is broken down into amino acids, it will absorb from the outside inside its body. Therefore, children, Rhizopus is the right answer. Now, let's move ahead to the next question. We have another 1 marker question. Let's look at the question. Consider the following statements about the small intestine and select which of the statement is not correct. So, we have to select the incorrect statement. So, let's look at the first statement. The length of the small intestine in animals differ as it depends on the type of food the animal eats. Let's look at the second option. The small intestine is the site of complete digestion of food. This is a key point that we need to keep in mind. Option 3. The small intestine receives secretion from liver and the pancreas. And option 4, the villi of the small intestine, it absorbs water from the unabsorbed food before it is removed from the body via the anus. Now children, let's select the right options first, right? First option A, it tells us that the length of intestine is different in different animals and it highly depends on the kind of food they eat, and this is absolutely correct. If we look in the small intestine of the herbivores, they have a very long intestine because it takes a lot of time to break cellulose-rich food. As they are herbivorous animals, they eat plant. Similarly, if you consider a carnivorous animals, they eat animals, that is they eat meat, and meat is relatively easy to digest and therefore they have a small intestine. Hence, option A is correct. Option B says that small intestine is a site of complete digestion of food, which is also correct. Now let me explain. Children, if we consider human and digestion in our bodies, our digestion starts in the mouth itself because we have certain digestive enzymes in the saliva. Then the food enter into the esophagus and by peristalsis it will enter into the stomach where further digestion will take place. However, still the digestion is not complete. Now, this semi-digested food from the stomach will enter into small intestine. Now, in the intestine, children, there are 3 digestive juices which are filled with enzymes that helps in completing the digestion. And these juices, they are produced one by the intestine itself, which is known as the intestinal juice. Second is the bile that comes from the liver, and the pancreatic enzymes that comes from the pancreas into the small intestine. And all these juices who are filled with enzymes will now digest all the food into simpler substances. Therefore, option C is also correct. Alright children, now let's look at the fourth option, that is option D. It says that the villi of small intestine, it absorbs water from the unabsorbed food before it gets removed from the body via the anus. For that, let's understand what exactly is villi. Children, villi is the folding of the small intestine. So, when we look at a small intestine from inside, not from the outside, when I go and enter into the small intestine, the surface is not straight like this. The surface is highly folded to form such finger-like projections, as we can see over here in this diagram. So, this is how the small intestines actually look from inside. It has this villi-like structures. Alright, we can see over here that this is a cell of the small intestine which is known as the enterocytes. Beside it is a small goblet cell that produces the mucus. And on this enterocytes, children, we can see this small projections which are known as the microvilli that helps in absorption of nutrients like glucose, amino acids, fatty acids and glycerol. Okay, so villi is a very important characteristic of the small intestine, but it does not play a major role in absorption of water. That is the function of large intestine. So, once all the digestion is completed and most of the nutrients are absorbed in the small intestine, the undigested food, it enters into the large intestine. Now, from this undigested food, water is absorbed there, and then whatever undigested food remains, we will call it as the feces, and that will be defecated out through the anus. So, what is the right answer over here? The right answer over here is option D. I hope it is clear. Now, let's move on to the next question. Let's look at this another 1-marker question. Assertion statement is that blood clotting prevents excessive loss of blood. Reason for it is given. Blood clotting is due to the blood plasma and the white blood cells which is present in the blood. Now, let's look at the option. Option A says that both assertion and reasons are true and reason is the correct explanation of the assertion. Option B says that both assertion and reasons are true, but reason is not the correct explanation of assertion. Option C says assertion is true, but reason is false. And option D says that assertion is false, but reason is true. So let's answer this. Children, we all know that blood clotting is a very important mechanism to prevent the loss of blood. So whenever children, our blood vessel have any kind of injury and there is a cut into it, what will happen? The blood will start flowing outside. Yes or no? And in order to prevent that, we need to clot the blood. We need to seal this opening. We need to seal this gap so that the loss of blood is stopped immediately. And for that, we need two things. One, that are the platelets, which are the cells present in our blood. And second, we need different numbers and types of clotting factors, which are also present in the blood. With the help of platelets and the clotting factors, we can form a plug that will seal this hole and prevent the loss of blood. Okay, let's revisit the question. Assertion is that blood clotting prevents excessive loss of blood. This is clear. That means assertion is true. Now let's look at the reason. The reason says the blood clotting is due to the blood plasma and the white blood cells. This is incorrect. We just talked that the platelets, which are the cells of the blood, they play a role in clotting. Therefore, what is the correct answer? The correct answer is option C. That is, assertion is true, but the reason is false. Okay. One extra information that I would like to give you. The function of WBC is to protect the body from the infecting bacteria and other agents. Alright. Therefore, the answer over here is, children, C, that is, assertion is true, but the reason is false. I hope this was clear. Now, let's move ahead. These are the 2-marker questions asked in the year 2023. So, the question is, name the type of blood, that is, whether it is oxygenated or deoxygenated, transported by each of the following, and mention the path, that is, from one organ, that is which place, to another place. So, let's look at it. First, they have asked about the vena cava. Next, they have asked about the pulmonary artery. Alright, children? Now, this question was asked in option with another question, that is, with the help of a schematic flow chart, show the breakdown of glucose in a cell to provide energy in the presence of oxygen and in the lack of oxygen. So, we need to tell them the entire pathway in which the glucose is broken down in both of these conditions. Alright, children. So, let's start attempting the questions one by one. We will start with A. Now, children, here we can see this beautiful internal structure of the heart. Okay. We will first understand about the vena cavas. As we can see over here, children, the vena cava is shown in blue color. This is the superior vena cava and this is the inferior vena cava. Alright. Children, the superior vena cava, as it is shown in blue, it means it is carrying deoxygenated blood. Now, what do we mean by deoxygenated blood? The blood that is rich in CO2 and poor in oxygen. So, that part is answered. Now, the second part of the question was, where is this vena cava coming from and where is it entering? Alright. So, first let's solve where is it coming from. Children, the superior vena cava, it carries the deoxygenated blood from all the parts of body which is superior to the heart. So, for example, here is where my heart is present, right? So, parts which are superior to my heart or above my heart will include my arms, my neck, my head, my brain and all the other different parts, muscles and bones. So, all the deoxygenated blood which is formed over here, it is carried by the superior vena cava. Alright. So, what is the answer over here? The superior vena cava, it carries the deoxygenated blood from the parts which is superior to the heart. Similarly, children, the inferior vena cava, it carries the blood. Which kind of blood? Again, we can see over here, it's blue. That means it also carries the deoxygenated blood from the parts which is inferior to the heart. So again, here is my heart. So everything that is present below my heart, which will include my entire abdomen and all the organs present over here, my legs, my feet, my toes, and so on. So from all these parts, whatever deoxygenated blood is formed, it is going to be carried by the inferior vena cava. So now we are clear from where it is bringing the deoxygenated blood. Now let's see where it brings into. So here children, we can see the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava, both of them will bring the deoxygenated blood into the right atrium. Got it? So let's quickly write it down children. Vena cavas, both superior and inferior, it carries deoxygenated blood from all the organs of the body into the right atrium. Very important. Okay, so where is it carrying from? All the organs of the body into the right atrium. Alright children, now let's talk about the another blood vessel, that is the pulmonary artery. Okay, children, as we can see over here in the diagram, this is a pulmonary artery, and also if you look at it clearly, it is also blue in color because it is also carrying deoxygenated blood. Is it not blowing your mind? It should, because it is the only artery in our body to carry deoxygenated blood. No other artery will carry deoxygenated blood. Alright. Anyway, so pulmonary artery, it carries deoxygenated blood. Answer number 2. Where does it start from? Children, we can see over here in the diagram that it is starting from the lower chamber of the heart on the right side. That means it starts from the right ventricle. And where is it going? You don't have to memorize this, children. If you look at the name itself, pulmonary. Pulmonary comes from the word pulmon. And pulmon means air, or in our case, if we slightly modify it, it means lungs. That means this artery is traveling from right ventricle to the lungs of the body. And children, it makes sense, right? Because this has deoxygenated blood. So if it goes to the lungs, the blood will be oxygenated and purified over there, right? That makes sense, children? Okay. So I hope this part of the question is clear. Now let's move to the next question. That is, how does a glucose breaks down in different conditions? So let's look into it. Children, glucose is a 6-carbon molecule, as we all know, and in the cytoplasm, it is broken down into pyruvate, that is a 3-carbon molecule, and some amount of energy or ATP is released. So whatever the condition be, the breakdown into pyruvate is anyways going to happen in the cytoplasm. Alright, now let's look at the condition number 1, that is, what if glucose is broken down in absence of oxygen, like for example in the yeast. So in the yeast also, children, glucose to pyruvate conversion takes place in the cytoplasm of the yeast, and later on pyruvate will be broken down into ethanol, carbon dioxide, and some amount of energy, that is the ATP, will be released. Alright. Now, let's look at the second condition, that is, how will the glucose breakdown be seen during deficiency or lack of oxygen in human or the muscle cells during exercise. Alright. So, again, till pyruvate, the reaction remains same. After that, the pyruvate will be broken down into lactic acid and some amount of energy or the ATP will be released. Alright. And third, how will the glucose breakdown be seen when there is enough oxygen present in the cell? Then that breakdown will take place in the mitochondria of the cell, and the glucose will be broken down into carbon dioxide, water, and the energy. I would like to ask you one additional question. In out of this three condition, where do you think maximum energy will be released? Yes, you are right. It will be in the third condition, that is in presence of oxygen. I hope this was clear. Now, let's move ahead. The next question is, name the part of human excretory system where nephrons are found. Write its structure and its function. Okay, so we are talking about where do we see a nephron, what is its structure, and what is its function. So let's look at the solution. Now let's look at the structure of the nephron. Here you can see the nephron looks very scary. Let me show you a very simple diagram for your understanding, and then we will move to this scary highly folded nephron. So children, nephron has this cup-like structure, which we call it as the Bowman's capsule. Then it continues down, which forms the neck, and now it starts to fold. So we can see this is the first folding, and the first folding is known as the proximal convoluted tube, which is also known as the PCT. After its first folding, children, the nephron decides to go down, and then again it comes up. Right? So what does it do? It first decides to go down, and then it decides to come up, and it forms this loop, which is known as loop of Henle. Alright, so here it descends down, so this is the descending limb of Henle, and here it ascends up, it is moving up, so this will be known as the ascending limb of Henle. Alright, after it ascends, it again decides to fold a little bit, and this is known as the distal convoluted tubule or the DCT. And once it forms a DCT, it decides that okay, I will now merge with a big tubule or a big duct, which is known as the collecting duct. Alright, so here we can see the same diagram in a slightly scary manner, but don't worry, I will make it very simple for you to understand. Let's look over here. Here children, you can see this structure. This is our Bowman's capsule. Alright, now this Bowman's capsule decides to fold a little bit. So this forms our PCT, what we can see in purple color. After that it descends to go down. So this is the descending limb of Henle, and finally it's like okay, let's go up, and it forms the ascending limb of Henle. Together it forms the loop of Henle. Alright, the loop of Henle will ascend up, and it will again fold, which will form the DCT, and now you can see how the DCT opens into this long duct, which is the collecting duct. Alright, so this is the structure of nephron. Alright, now children, let's quickly discuss the function of a nephron. Nephron children, they are very important because they produce urine in our body. Each and every nephron in the kidneys produce urine. Now, why is urine such a big deal? Why it needs to be removed every day? Why we need to go to the toilet 5 times, 6 times in a day? Because children, in our body, there are toxic waste products continuously being produced. And this toxic waste products, it is ammonia, urea, and uric acid. Children, these waste products, which are continuously being formed in your body, if they are not removed, they will start damaging the cells of your body. And that will lead to tissue damage and eventually organ damage. Therefore, it is very important that as soon as they are produced, they are removed from the body. Now, you might think that, ma'am, why not remove these toxic waste products in the feces? Why nature gave us kidney? Why are we only removing it in the urine? Why not remove it through the feces? Because children, these three products, they are only water soluble. and therefore they cannot be removed through feces. Alright, so I hope we are clear with the structure and the function of the nephron. Okay children, now let's move to the next question. Please keep in mind that this is a 3-marker question. State the role of ATP in cellular respiration. Number 2, what ensures sufficient exchange of gases in plants? Number 3, state the conditions on which the direction of gas diffusion in plants depends. Or, what is the internal energy reserve in plants and animals? How desert plants perform photosynthesis if the stomata remains closed during the day? So, let's start answering this question one by one. Starting from the first question, state the role of ATP in cellular respiration. So, first children, let's understand what is cellular respiration. Cellular respiration means breakdown of glucose in the presence of oxygen that will give rise to CO2, H2O and ATP. You must have seen this reaction so many times where the glucose is broken down in presence of oxygen, which will give rise to CO2 plus H2O and the release of energy. And this energy is trapped in the form of ATP molecule, which is also considered as the energy currency of a cell. The question over here they asked is, what is the use of ATP in our cells? So children, ATP, since it is rich of energy, it is used to perform a lot of activities in a cell. Like for example, it can be used for muscle contraction. So when we are moving, when we are walking, when we are running, we are constantly contracting our muscles. For that, ATP is being used by each and every muscle cell. It is also used for synthesis of some molecule. Okay, so whenever we are synthesizing or whenever making a new carbohydrate or making a new protein or any other molecule in our body, ATP is required to perform that chemical reaction. Okay, next, ATP is also required for transportation. Okay, so these are the 3 examples that we can use that states the use of ATP in cellular respiration. Alright, coming to the next question children, what ensures sufficient exchange of gases in plants? This includes the stomata, which are the openings present in the leaves that allows the O2-CO2 exchange. Also, it includes the lenticels, which are the openings which are present in the woody stems of plants. Okay. Now, let's move to the next question. State the condition on which the direction of gas diffusion in plants depends. Children, gas diffusion means movement of gases, that is the O2 and CO2. And gas always move from high concentration to low concentration smoothly. So, if we talk about the diffusion of gas of CO2 specifically, obviously it is higher in atmosphere. So, the CO2 will diffuse from atmosphere into the plant or the leaf. Yes. Now, the plant is going to use this CO2 to produce huge amount of O2. Now, O2 will diffuse from the leaf into the atmosphere. So, the condition on which the direction depends is on the concentration of gases. I hope children this is clear. Now, let's move to the next question. What is the internal energy reserve in plants and animals? This question simply means how do plants and animals save their food? In which form is it converted and stored? Now children, we all know that glucose is always broken down to give energy. But the catch over here is that the cell cannot keep glucose just as it is inside it. Because every time a glucose is present just like that, it will quickly be broken down into ATP even when there is no requirement of that. and therefore the cell has to think smart. The cell has to convert this glucose into some other form that is not quickly broken down, and that other form is your energy reserve. In plants, the glucose is converted into starch. So whenever the plant needs food, it will break down the starch into glucose, and therefore starch acts as the energy or the food reserve. Whereas in animals, the food reserve or the energy reserve is in the form of glycogen, which we will find in the muscles and in the liver. So whatever excess glucose we have, children, in our body, it will be converted into the glycogen in the muscle cell and in the liver cell. And whenever we need immediate energy, these cells will convert it back into glucose and it will distribute in the body with the help of blood. Okay, so the energy reserve in plant is starch, the energy reserve in animal is glycogen. Where is starch stored? Literally everywhere. It is stored in the leaf, it is stored in the stem, it is stored even in the fruit. Alright, so let me quickly mention that it is stored in the leaf, stems and fruits. And the glycogen is stored in the muscle cell and in the liver cell. Alright, now the next question is, children, how the desert plants perform photosynthesis if the stomata remains closed during the day. Alright, children. So first of all, one must think, why is the stomata closed during the day for desert plants? Obviously, because the temperatures are very high, and if the stomata remains open, it will lose a lot of water in the form of evaporation. And anyways, availability of water in desert areas is so less that the plant can't afford to do so. But does that mean that plant will absolutely not do photosynthesis? No, it will still perform photosynthesis, but very intelligently. So let's understand. See, during the day, children, the plant will keep the stomata closed. But as the night begins, the temperature falls down in the desert area. And now it is safe for the plant to open its stomata. Now at night, as the stomata opens, it will quickly take in the CO2. Alright, and at night, this CO2 will be converted into malic acid. That is it. No photosynthesis happens during the night. Alright, now next morning, children, since the plant cannot open the stomata, the malic acid will be converted back into its CO2. Alright, and now this CO2 will react with water in the presence of sunlight, and it will give rise to, and it will form the glucose. And that is how the photosynthesis will still continue in a desert plant. And that is how the desert plant will still be able to produce food and survive for years, even without opening the stomata during the day. I hope this is clear, children. Now, let's move ahead. Now, we are starting with the year 2024. First, we will talk about one marker question, that is the MCQ. So, the first question is, a stomata closes when? Option A, it needs carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. Option B, it does not need carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. Option C, water flows out of the guard cells. And option D, the water flows into the guard cells. Now, if you have already studied about it, you might find more than one answer correct. Yes or no? Now, let's look at the options. The correct reasons in the process are option A, only statement 1 is correct. Option B, statement 1 and 3 both are correct. Option C, statement 2 and 3 both are correct. And option D, that is a statement 2 and 4 both are correct. So, let's look into the diagram of the stomata. Then here we can see the stomata is open. Alright. When does the stomata opens? When the plant needs CO2. And second condition is that the guard cells are filled with water. They are turgid, they are swollen. When they swell, they slightly shift apart and small opening develops, that is your stomata, and the carbon dioxide will be taken in. Its reverse will lead to closing of stomata. That is, when the plant does not need any more carbon dioxide, what will happen? The stomata will start to close. And what will happen in the guard cell at that time? Water will be removed from the guard cell. and as a result of which the guard cell become very flaccid, and when it becomes very flaccid and lose water, it will close the stomata. So let's check our options over here. The option 1 says that it needs carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. Obviously that is the wrong option, right? Because if there is a requirement, stomata will open. Option 2 tells that it does not need carbon dioxide for photosynthesis, which is absolutely correct. Option 3 says water flows out of the guard cell. This is also absolutely correct. And option 4 is the opposite of it, which is wrong. Therefore, the correct answer is option C, that is where both statement 2 and 3 are correct. Alright children, easy? Now let's move ahead. Let's look at another MCQ. Assertion: the rate of breathing in aquatic organism is much faster than in the terrestrial organism, and the reason is the amount of oxygen dissolved in water is very high as compared to the amount of oxygen in air. Options are: option A tells me that both assertion and reason are true, and reason is the correct explanation. Option B is both assertion and reason are true, but reason is not the correct explanation. Option C tells me assertion is true, but reason is false, and option D tells that the assertion is false, but the reason is true. The correct answer over here is option C. Assertion is true, but reason is false. So now let's understand this. Children, the rate of breathing in aquatic animals like fishes is very fast as compared to terrestrial organism. This is absolutely correct. The fish will breathe much more faster than any of the terrestrial animals. But the reason which is given over here is that the amount of oxygen dissolved in water is very high as compared to the amount of oxygen in the air. This is absolutely wrong. Obviously children, in the air the oxygen is lot more as compared to water, and I will give you a data for it. For example, in the air we have 21% oxygen, whereas in water we only have 1% oxygen. So first of all, the statement is entirely incorrect. Okay. Alright. So we have more amount of oxygen in air than in the water. And now it should make sense. See children, when the amount of oxygen in the water is less, the fish will have to breathe very fast to compensate for this fact. Because the faster it will breathe, more oxygen it will be able to take in. Alright. Therefore, the answer is option C, that is the assertion is true, but reason is false. It's an incorrect statement. I hope this is clear. Chalo, let's move ahead. Now we will be talking about 2-marker questions that were asked in year 2024. The first question is, state one role of each of the following in the human digestive system. First is HCl, that is a hydrochloric acid. Option 2 is the villi. Option 3 is the anal sphincter, and option 4 is the enzyme lipase. Okay, let's quickly do its function. HCl children, it is present in our stomach and it plays a very important role. Yes children, think one more time. HCl, a acid, is present in your stomach and it is highly required. Let's see why. Children, HCl helps in converting inactive form of a enzyme which is known as the pepsinogen into its active form, that is the pepsin. And why is pepsin so important? Because without pepsin, the proteins will not be digested. So no matter how much dal you have, how much milk you have, meats and eggs, if you don't have pepsin in your stomach, you will not be able to digest it. And how will you have pepsin? Only if you have HCl in the stomach. Alright. So once the pepsin is formed, the proteins will be broken down into peptones and proteases by the enzyme pepsin. So what is the function of HCl? HCl helps in converting the inactive pepsinogen enzyme into its active form, that is the pepsin, which is required for protein digestion. Alright. Now, let's look at the second question, that is, what is the function of villi? First of all, children, where is villi found? Villi is found in the small intestine. So, like we discussed earlier in this video, the villi are finger-like foldings of the small intestine. Children, see, when we look at the small intestine from outside, it will simply appear like this, right? The surface looks pretty smooth. But the same intestine, if you look at it from inside, that is, I throw you into the intestine and you are looking at the surface of the intestine. How will it look? It will look highly finger-like. It is not straight surface like this. No. It is highly finger-like, highly folded. Why? It is because we want to increase the surface area of the intestine. What does this exactly mean? Children, if the internal lining or the internal membrane of the intestine was straight, and if we want a huge length of the small intestine, then it will occupy a lot more space than the human body has. Alright, but if I smartly convert this straight internal membrane into number of foldings, then don't you think I will have a longer small intestine but still occupying small area in the body? Yes, so that is exactly the purpose why the villi are present. It increases the surface area, because of which there is increased absorption of the nutrients, that is the glucose, the amino acids, vitamins, minerals and fatty acids and glycerol. So the more the nutrients you will be able to absorb, more you will be able to deliver it to the cells, and more cells will be able to do its metabolism, and healthy our living will be. Okay. Coming to the third structure, that is the anal sphincter. Children, sphincters are like doors which opens and which close. However, they are not your regular doors, which is hinged, that okay, it is opening and it is closing. The sphincters are like circular doors, and it is made up of muscles. Alright, the sphincters are made up of muscles. Now, these muscles may close and this muscle may open. So, when the muscles close, the sphincter closes, and when the muscles open, the sphincter opens. Anal sphincter is present at the end of the anus, which is the last part of the large intestine. So, let me draw a quick large intestine. Alright, this last part, this is the anus. And around this anus, like I told you, we have the muscles in a circular format. So, when this anal sphincter or this anal muscles closes, what will happen? The feces will not be able to move out. That's exactly what we do when we want to go to the toilet, but it's not available. Right? We hold on to it, right? So that we just don't spoil our pants. What are you doing then? You are making your anal sphincter contract and you're closing the door of your large intestine so that the feces don't go out. And as immediately you reach your home, you will relax the muscle and the sphincter, and the feces will go out. Alright? Coming to the next enzyme, that is the lipase. Now, from the word itself, you should be able to answer this. Children, lipase, let's break the word. Ase means an enzyme that breaks a substance which is lipids. So, lipase is an enzyme that breaks lipids into fatty acids and glycerol. It breaks it into the fatty acids and the glycerol. And this is seen in the small intestine. I hope, children, you were able to answer all these questions. Let's quickly revise. HCl helps in converting inactive pepsinogen into its active form, that is pepsin, which further helps with protein digestion. Villi, they are foldings which is seen in the internal surface of small intestine, that helps in increasing the surface area of small intestine and thus increasing the amount of the nutrients that can be absorbed. Third, we have the anal sphincter. It is a circular muscles which are found in the anus, that is the last part of the large intestine. which we can close and which we can open, that will determine the movement of the feces. And last is the enzyme lipase, which helps in breaking down of the lipids into fatty acids and glycerol in your small intestine. Alright, now let's move ahead. Why is the respiratory pigment needed in multicellular organism with large body size? So, let's quickly answer it. Children, animals with large body size, they have large metabolic rate. Now, what does this mean? It simply means that the requirement of oxygen is more in such animals. That means more oxygen needs to be transported to each and every cell of the body, right? Children, the oxygen which dissolves in the blood is not enough to provide to all the cells of the body in a large animal. But when we have a respiratory pigment, which in case of mammals is hemoglobin, it carries 70% more oxygen than blood alone or plasma alone can carry. And thus, having a respiratory pigment ensures that more oxygen is carried to each and every cell of the body, and therefore, the ATP production or the energy production is also more, and that helps the large sized animal to survive. Okay, so hemoglobin or other respiratory pigments helps carry more oxygen, as amount of oxygen in plasma is less. Okay, now let's move to the next question. Give reasons for the following. Rings of cartilage are present in the throat. Now children, we know that inside the throat we have a windpipe which is known as the trachea. Okay, so let's imagine this is a trachea. Now this trachea has C-shaped cartilaginous rings. Pay attention, it's not a circle, it's a C-shaped. Now let's say this is the front of the trachea and this is the back of the trachea. These C-shaped rings are arranged like this. That means from the front the trachea is completely covered, but from the back the trachea is not fully covered, right? Now the importance of having these rings in the trachea, it ensures that the trachea remains open. If these rings were not present around the trachea, the walls of the trachea would stick to each other. That means the trachea would collapse and the movement of air from nose to the lungs and from lungs back into the nose during inspiration and expiration respectively, the movement of the air will be stopped. Alright. Therefore, it is very important for us to keep the trachea open, and this responsibility is given to the rings of the cartilage present over there. Okay. One thing to keep in mind, that this ring-like structures around the trachea, they are of C-shaped. Alright. Now, let's move to the next question. Lungs always contains some residual volume of air. Now, this is again a beautiful question. Now, let's say this is an alveoli. Okay, alveoli is the final part of the respiratory tract where air will enter. So, now you have inspired the air and this air has reached the alveoli. Alright. Now, air has oxygen as well as CO2. All this oxygen will be exchanged with the blood vessels and some CO2 will enter into the alveoli, right? Now children, this air will be expired out. However, keep in mind that even after expiration, some air always remains inside the alveoli. And the reason for this is that this air will keep the alveoli open. If there is no air, just like how a balloon will deflate, the alveoli will also deflate and it will close. And that can lead to death. So, between two breaths, the alveoli remains open And the reason it remains open is because some volume of air, which is known as the residual volume, stays in the alveoli. Also, this has an advantage is that, let's say we are drinking water or we are eating food. Every time we swallow, children, the trachea is closed because the epiglottis closes the larynx. That means when you swallow, you cannot breathe in or breathe out. You can try this activity right now. Take your bottle and take a sip. Now, when you are swallowing it, keep your finger near your opening of the nose. And you will realize that you are neither breathing in or breathing out, but you are still not dying. And the reason is the residual air which is present in the alveoli is giving some oxygen continuously to your blood and eventually to the body. Alright. So, the lungs will always contain a residual volume of air to keep the alveoli open and continuously deliver oxygen to the body between two breaths. Okay. Now, let's move to the next question. The diaphragm flattens and the ribs are lifted up when we breathe in. So, when we breathe in, we are doing inspiration. Now, we all know that inspiration is an active process. Now, what do you mean by active process? It simply means that we are actively contracting the muscles of respiration, which includes two muscles, that is the diaphragm and the external intercostal muscles. Now, children, a diaphragm muscle is a dome-shaped muscle. So, let's say these are your two lungs and the diaphragm is present just below it in the form of a dome shape. Alright. Now, when you start inspiring, the diaphragm will start contracting. And from the dome shape, it will actually become flat. So, let's say this is your diaphragm, this is your dome shaped diaphragm and two lungs are sitting on top of it. When the diaphragm contracts, it becomes flat like this. Alright. So, when the diaphragm contracts and it becomes flat, the lungs can expand in this direction each, and that will increase the lung volume. That means that more air can be inspired in if lung gets space to expand, right? So, the diaphragm, which is normally dome shaped when we are at rest, it becomes flattened during inspiration to make space for the lungs to expand. Right? Now, along with that, the ribs are also lifted up. So, external intercostal muscles, children, these are the muscles which are present between the ribs. Break the word intercostal. Inter means between, costa means ribs. Alright. So, let's say these are the two ribs. Alright. Now, the intercostal muscle is present between the two ribs. So, during inspiration, the intercostal muscle also contracts, and by doing that, the entire rib cage is moved upwards and outwards. This also helps in increasing the space for lungs to expand so that we can inspire more air. Alright. So, during inspiration, the diaphragm flattens, that is the diaphragm contracts, and the external intercostal also contracts to make more space for air to enter. Alright. Now, let's move to the next question. Walls of alveoli contains an extensive network of blood vessels. We all know that lungs are the filtering organs of the blood, right? How do they do so? So, these balloon-shaped structures, they are surrounded by lots of blood vessels. And the reason for that is because this balloon-shaped alveoli are responsible to bring about the exchange of gas. Meaning, whatever air we have inspired is obviously going to have more oxygen, and this oxygen is going to enter into the blood vessels. This will lead to increase in the oxygen levels of the blood, and all the deoxygenated blood which is coming to the lungs to be filtered out, right? All that CO2 will be removed from the blood vessels, which will eventually be expired out. So, by adding O2 and removing CO2, we are filtering the blood. Now, imagine if lungs only have few blood vessels or the alveoli only have few blood vessels. That means only little amount of deoxygenated blood will come to alveoli. right? That means only little amount of blood will be filtered and rest of the blood in the body will still remain deoxygenated. Do we want so? No, right? So that is why the alveoli contains an extensive or a huge network of blood vessels so that all the deoxygenated blood can be filtered. It can be oxygenated so that the remaining cells and the organs of the body can function thoroughly. I hope this was clear. Alright, let's look at this MCQ now. Secretion of less saliva in the mouth will affect the conversion of option A, proteins into amino acids, option B, fats into fatty acids and glycerol, option C, starch into simple sugars, and option D, sugar into alcohol. Alright children, so we know that the saliva in the mouth has a very important enzyme which is known as the salivary amylase. Can you recollect the another name for this enzyme? Yes, it is ptyalin. Alright. Now, salivary amylase, it starts the digestion of the starch in the mouth. So, whatever chapati or rice that we are eating, which are rich in the starch, alright, that starch is going to be broken down by our salivary amylase into maltose. Please remember, this is still incomplete digestion. This is not a complete digestion of the starch. Starch will be fully digested in the small intestine later on, alright. However, starch is digested into maltose by the salivary amylase. From whatever starch that we consume, only 20% of that starch is digested in the mouth, alright. Therefore, the correct answer is option C, that is starch will be broken down into simple sugars or maltose. Alright. Now, let's see why the other options are incorrect. Protein digestion into amino acids is not seen in the mouth because the enzyme for it is not present in the saliva. Alright. We see the digestion of the proteins in the stomach. Can you cut that part? Can you recollect which enzyme is responsible for protein breakdown? Yes, that is pepsin. Alright. Fats is broken down into fatty acids and glycerol in the small intestine. Therefore, option B is also incorrect. Option D says that sugar is broken down into alcohol. We do not see this breakdown in the humans. This is fermentation which is done by the yeast. Therefore, option D is also incorrect. I hope this was clear. Now, let's move on. Again, a 1 marker question. The breakdown of glucose has taken the following pathway. That is, glucose is broken down into region A into pyruvate and some energy is released, and then the further breakdown takes place in region B, which releases lactic acid and some more energy. We need to find out these regions or the sites of A and B. Option A, it says that is mitochondria and is oxygen deficient muscle cell. Option B says is cytoplasm and is oxygen rich muscle cells. Option C says is cytoplasm and is the yeast cell, and option D says is cytoplasm and is oxygen deficient muscle cell. Therefore, the correct answer will be option D, that is the mitochondria and the oxygen deficient muscle cells. Clear? Chalo, let's move to the next question. Now, 2 marker question, children. Besides minimizing the loss of blood, why is it essential to plug any leak in blood vessel? Name the component of blood which helps in this process and state how this component performs this function. Or, next question is, the transport system in plant is relatively slower than in the animals. Give the reason why. Question number 2. State the role of phloem in the transportation of materials in plants. Alright children, so now let's answer this question one by one. Question A is, besides minimizing the blood loss, why is it essential to plug any leak in the blood vessel? Alright, so let's first answer that. Children, whenever there is injury to the blood vessel, obviously we will experience the blood loss. and we immediately need to plug or to cover this opening to prevent the blood loss. Yes, but why? See children, when you lose the blood, the volume of the blood, that is the blood volume, decreases, right? And when the blood volume decreases, the blood pressure also decreases, and this will give rise to a condition which is known as hypotension. Children, when your blood pressure decreases, the speed at which the blood is flowing in your body also goes down. That means the delivery of oxygen and nutrients becomes very slow to all the organs of the body, which have a huge impact on your brain especially. So when the brain is getting slow and less amount of oxygen and glucose, the brain cells will start shutting down. The neurons will start becoming inactive, and because of that, we may feel a little bit dizzy and we may even faint and fall on the ground. Okay, so it is very important that we maintain the volume of the blood. And how do we do that? That whenever there is any tear in the blood vessel, we quickly plug that tear to prevent the blood loss and to maintain our blood pressure. Alright, now let's move to the next question. Name the component of blood which helps in this process. First of all, children, what is this process? This process is known as the blood clotting. Alright, which components are involved in blood clotting, children? We need a blood cell, that is the platelet, and we also need the clotting factors. Okay, now the next question is how this component performs this function. So let's look into it. So let me draw over here. This is an injured blood vessel with an opening. So whenever there is injury to the blood vessel, children, this platelet cells, which are your clotting heroes, basically, they start taking this position over here. Alright, and they will also attract lots of clotting factors, which are proteins present in the blood. And over here, children, there are lots of reactions that takes place, which results in formation of a fibrous net, just like a sieve tube. You know, you must have seen the sieve in your kitchen, the channi we use for filtering the tea. Similarly, children, all these components, they perform multiple reaction and it forms this net. And this net is known as the fibrin net, also known as the plug. And this net will cover the opening of the blood vessel. Alright, and that is how it will completely stop the loss of the blood. Alright, we will learn about two reactions over here that takes place in this process. Okay, children. So one of the clotting factor or a protein which is present in the blood, that is the prothrombin. This is inactive in a healthy blood vessel, meaning a blood vessel where there is no injury. This is converted into its active form, that is the thrombin. Now, thrombin is responsible to convert another inactive protein, that is fibrinogen, into its active form, that is fibrin. And like I told you, these fibrins, they are long fibrous threads and they are attached in form of a sieve, which will completely block that opening. Alright, children. So, we need the prothrombin conversion into thrombin and we need the thrombin to convert fibrinogen into the fibrin. Along with that, we also need vitamin K for clotting. Alright, children, I hope this is clear. Now, let's move to the next question, that is question B, statement number 1. The transport system in plant is relatively slower than in animals. Give reason for it. Children, us animals, we have a well-developed muscular heart. And this heart acts like a pumping organ, right? It is constantly pumping, it is contracting and pushing the blood. It is contracting and pushing the blood outside the heart. So because of this contraction, a huge pressure is generated. And that pressure is going to help in the circulation of the blood very quickly in the body. Whereas in plants, children, we don't have any such pumping organs. The movement is because of the difference in the pressure or difference in the other gradients. Alright. Therefore, the transport system in plants is relatively slower than in animals. Let us look at part B of the question now. State the role of phloem in the transport of materials in the plants. So children, phloem, it helps in movement of food from leaf into the fruits, to the stems and even to the roots. And this process through which it moves the food is known as translocation. I hope this is clear, children. Now, let's move ahead. Now we have last question, that is a long question for 4 marks. Let's look into the question. The maintenance function of all living organisms must go on even when they are not doing anything particular. Even when we are just sitting in a class or even asleep, this maintenance job has to go on. These maintenance processes require energy to prevent damage and breakdown of cells and tissues, which is obtained by individual organisms from the food which is prepared by the autotrophs called producers. Okay, let's look at the first question. Name and define the process by which the green plants prepare food, right? We already know the name of this process, that is photosynthesis. Alright, what is the definition of photosynthesis? Let's quickly write it down. It is a process by which the green plants, algae and some bacteria use sunlight to make their own food that is glucose from carbon dioxide and the water in presence of chlorophyll. And releasing oxygen as a byproduct. Alright, so I hope this was clear. Okay, now let's go to the next question. Write the chemical reaction which is involved in photosynthesis. So let's quickly write it down. It is 6 CO2 plus 6 H2O in presence of sunlight and chlorophyll will give us C6H12O6, that is glucose, and liberate 6 molecules of oxygen. Right? Now let's move to the next question. State in proper sequence the events that occur in synthesis of food by the desert plants. So let's quickly write the sequence, children. It's very simple. First is that in the desert plant, in order to minimize the loss of water during the day, their stomatas open at night, right? And when the stomatas open at night, CO2 enters the leaves. So that is step number 1. Now, step number 2, this CO2 is fixed into organic acids like the malic acid and is stored in vacuoles. Now, during the day, we know that the stomata will close to prevent the loss of water. During the day now, this organic acid or the malic acid will be broken down, alright, and it will release CO2 inside the leaf. Now, during the day, the light energy from the sun, which is absorbed by the chlorophyll, and that will help in formation of ATP and NADPH, right? And finally, there will be release of carbon dioxide, which is used in Kelvin cycle to synthesize glucose. Alright, I hope the steps were clear. Alright, children. Now let's move to the next question, that is, explain what will happen to the rate at which the green plants will prepare food, that is, do photosynthesis in case of cloudy weather. Obviously, children, when there is a cloudy weather, the availability of sunlight is low, and when the availability of sunlight is low, the rate at which the photosynthesis happens will also reduce. And if the photosynthesis rate reduces, there will be reduced production of glucose. Next question is, what will happen to the rate of photosynthesis when stomata gets blocked due to the dust? Obviously, if the opening of the plant is covered by dust, the CO2 absorption will reduce. If CO2 absorption will reduce, the rate of photosynthesis and food production will also reduce. Right, children? So, I hope this session was incredibly informative for you. It helped you understand new concepts which you were not fully aware of and helped you revise what you already know. Alright, children, I will see you soon. Till then, take care and stay curious.